Steady?
Ready?
Another day, another podcast.
Let's do it.
Okay, so before we're gonna officially open our next episode, quick question. When you are thinking about EU elections, which movie is coming to your mind?
Which movie? I will say the movie that comes to my mind is The Hunger Games.
Really?
Because, during the Hunger Games, you have a bunch of participants fighting, and then we have one winner or more. And similar to the EU elections, you have a lot of political parties fighting, of course, not to the death, but to win a spot at the European Parliament.
Okay, why I'm already regretting that I asked you this question. I have feeling in my back of my head that you will connect the topic of this episode to the Hunger Games movie. Ay, 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 ay.
I promise I will not do it.
We will see. Anyway, hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Be Europe. I'm Caro, Training and Membership Officer at Eurodesk Brussels Link.
And I'm Stefanos, Communication Officer at Eurodesk Brussels Link. Today's episode is hotter than a capital party because we are about to discuss young people's opinion about the European Parliament.
Indeed, we will be uncovering what the European Parliament means to young people. Are they just spectators, passively observing, or they are ready to take action?
And let's not forget, all the scandals that have unfolded. It's like uncovering President Snow's secret rose garden. You never know what you are going to find there. But we won't go into this arena alone. Joining our uprising, we have the Mockingjay, Laura Kiviselg.
Welcome to this podcast from Estonia.
Hi, Laura. Laura, we know that you are a young person who wears many hats. Could you please share your story with our listeners and us? I'm very curious what made you decide to get involved in politics.
Yeah, sure. Well, the topic of young people is really, really hard for me because now I'm turning 25 and I'm almost an old person now. So I'm in between the age where I'm old for young people and young for old people. So just to point that out as well. But I'm Laura and I come from Estonia. I'm 24 years now. And I started my career in the youth work sector, I would call, when I turned 12, actually, where my school teacher told me that there's a youth council going on in our city and asked if I wanted to join them for one meeting. And well, one meeting came to hundreds of meetings. So I got to be part of the Pärnu Youth City Council. And from there on, it was just a really logical steps one after another for me. So I could be in the student councils in my schools. After that, I also was a candidate for the local government when I turned 18. So I ran my first elections when I turned 18. And I actually got in, which was really surprising. I got 110 votes, which was amazing already. And from there on, I could sit in different chairs and see what politics is about, and also about youth participation, because this is my passion topic. And as I am the young person who has been participating in different levels on different organizations, then just step by step I have stood up for youth and youth participation and youth work in general. But now I work as the coordinator of Eurodesk, and this is my main job. But I also am a helper of the vice chair of the parliament in Estonia, just to see how the national level works as well. Even though I ran for the Parliament of Estonia in 2023 as well, I didn't get in, even though I was third with the votes I got from my county and my area. And yeah, this is a short version of my stories. Started as a youth participant in different youth organizations, and then run up to different political levels. And sure, it has been a ride. So yeah.
I mean, it was half of your life, so definitely
Yeah, that's something that I'm really proud of. I can say that I have been in the youth sector for half of my life now.
congratulations and thanks you for sharing. So, looking back at that, what would you say is your secret survival skill in the political area?
That's a great question. From from that point of view, that as a young person in politics, but also as a young woman in politics, because during the last century, of course, the terms and conditions have been better, and of course, thanks to me being active from a really quite early age, that has supported me a lot. So if I have to say that what's my superpower is that I'm not going away after the elections, as it is usually one of the sayings that the politicians are here only when it's elections time. But I can't go anywhere because young people are the ones who I work with, and if I don't have young people, I don't have my job, and somehow you have to eat in the evenings. So I think that that's one of my superpowers, but also time management. All of the experiences I have gone through, all of the programs, all of the also educational background, everything has been really supportive. But at the same time, you have to time manage quite good, because from some periods of life, I have lived in different cities across Estonia, but still being active in my local government, which I'm really, really proud of, that I didn't give away my chair for the 3 years I went to university to get my bachelor degree, for example. So, yeah, time management and not missing out during the time when it's in between.
Those are great talents.
And Laura, from your work, do you think young people are interested in European politics? Because I know, we live in Brussels, and Brussels is, full of young people interested in the field. But, when I go back home in Cyprus and I ask my friends, I discuss with them about EU politics, they don't really care because Cyprus is far away from Brussels. It's like they don't feel connected. So how is it in Estonia, for example?
Yeah, for me, what I have seen in my professional life, I can definitely say that the EU is kind of hard to get your hand into. First of all the things that you hear from the schools are only about these institutions. Usually, don't talk about the politics. You don't go through the processes. You only hear what the institutions are. We have the European Commission, and it is made for this and this, but you actually don't understand why they are working or how they are working, and so on. And again, as Estonia is also a border city for European Union, I would definitely say that there are differences between the local, the national, and EU levels. But at the same time, I'm not too worried that the European level goes missing somewhere. From that point of view, that we have Europe everywhere as well, and politics we have everywhere as well. For me, maybe the general concern is that young people are not too into politics, even though they maybe are, but they don't understand that those are political decisions they are talking about. The same goes with us. And as a Eurodesk coordinator, when we talk about Erasmus Plus and European Solidarity Corps, this is European level. We don't understand it, maybe. We don't think about it, where the money comes from, how much actually is it, because when we are participants we just take part of those kind of opportunities and maybe don't connect the points. But that's also another thing that sometimes I feel that young people don't too much understand, but at the same time when you point it out they are like, oh yeah, I remember there was one bridge built by the European Union funding in my village, or so on. So there are connections, but there are not too many.
Mhm.
And You said that the young people they don't understand about the EU, but in your opinion, what do you think is the biggest challenge for young people's participation in politics?
Mhm. For me, there's like two approaches to this. One is direct youth participation in decision-making processes, which means that when we talk about youth participation, people are definitely thinking about processes that are directly connected with decision-making, even though youth participation can mean that they are just taking part of some kind of opportunities, some kind of different ways, alternative ways of participating in some kind of processes. And I'm not too sure if the adults actually understand what youth participation is. For example, when you ask about like how are you including young people into your work, then maybe the example is that they are choosing between this and this, and that's also youth participation, but that's not on the grassroots. Young people can choose between two options, not that they can think about options themselves. That's nothing to be ashamed of course. Youth participation is what it is, and there are some levels that you cannot include young people in the topics, but there are definitely different methods to talk about youth participation. And uh, another challenge is that there are only small parts where people feel that they are the experts, which means that there are not all topics that you can talk about in a big room. For example, if you engage young people with the event, there's 1,000 young people coming up, but if there is 1,000 people, there are 1,000 opinions. And for example, when we talk about youth participation, not all of them want to talk about youth participation.
Mhm.
When there's a topic about environment, not all of them want to talk about the environment. So I also think that it's about like personalization of the youth participation, that we are actually trying to engage from that. And the last thing that I feel is one of the most important things to point out is that nobody wants to feel stupid.
Mm.
And by that, I mean that even when you are a politician, even when you are a young person who doesn't know anything, even when you're a teacher, whatever is what the role you're carrying on, you don't want to feel stupid. So one of the biggest challenge is how to ask young people questions so they wouldn't feel that they are stupid and they don't understand the questions. Uh, Whatever we talk about. So yeah, those are maybe three of the biggest challenge for me. That we don't understand youth participation directly. We don't think about the same things when we talk about youth participation. The second is that there are different topics that young people are differently engaged, and the third one is that it matters how you approach young people.
Mhm. And from your point of view, in your opinion, is there anything what the national parties can do uh, to ensure that their messages resonate more effectively with the younger democrats?
Mhm. Um, from one side, if I look at the like general overview of politicians and politics in the media or social media, for me it seems that most of the messages have been written by the people who only engage with the bigger part, which are adults from the age of
Mm.
18 until 64, or depending when the pension starts. Which means that they are trying to get the messages directly for those kind of young people, adults, not for young people indirectly, which isn't a kind of a problem, but at the same time it is, because we need to reach young people with messages that are more understandable for them as well.
Mhm.
uh, Another thing is that when you see a politician comes to school and represent whatever they have in mind to share with the young people, it's usually that the politicians talk about like 45 minutes, and then there's 15 minutes for questions, but it actually should be like questions and answers, so the young people can actually ask the questions, even if they are on a basic level. So from that point, young people have the direct connection with the politicians, and it's more open to actually understand understand what the politicians mean and what young people actually want to hear. So from that side, I would just encourage for both. Like, I understand that there are schools and youth sector and youth workers who might be not too open to also ask politicians to come to
Mhm,
school. You don't want to be political, and that's
mhm,
totally fine. But maybe there are some connections where you could actually somehow support young people in the democratic life. For example, youth workers could use uh, Eurodesk Euro classes to
mhm,
understand and talk about participation or different kinds of methods that you could actually engage young people.
mhm,
Also, the schools. So I think that when we talk about like messaging young people, it's just a collaboration between different sectors in the way that politics is actually interesting. What I have
mhm,
told through my own experience is that when a young person wakes up in the morning and has to go to school, then you have to go to a bus station, then you have to get on a bus, then you have to go and walk for, I don't know, 200 meters on a nice road, which is covered by whatever it is called in English. I don't know the word in English. Then you get to a school, then you have lunch, then you have like 7 hours of classes, then you get to a vocational school or some kind of hobby school. Those are all political decisions. You cannot say that you are not interested because this is all that's around you. But
mhm,
that's also something that people usually don't think about, that most of the things that are happening around us are actually political decisions. So in the way that you are actually pointing out what are the political decisions that are around you might make the messages also more interesting. But
mhm.
definitely you should reach young people by reaching young people, not by reaching the general population and then trying to understand what the young people want.
And if we would reach to young people, and now with my next question, I would like to focus on the young people and on their voices. According to you, what are some key topics important for young people, which they want politicians to take actions on?
Mhm. I will come back to my answer that was that all of the young people have some kind of topics that are
Mhm,
in their own hearts. And
mhm,
by that, I also mean that when we talk about youth participation, youth are definitely engaged more into youth related questions, which means youth work, schools, or youth councils, or whatever are the different ways of reaching young people. But all of the topics are somehow related to youth.
mhm,
If youth cannot vote for if they want some kind of building in the city where they are going to live in maybe in 50 years, but the people who are decision makers, not my, they might not make it until the building is built, then that's a big issue. So like connecting those two, so that all topics are important for young people. But if I have to point out what are the maybe key topics that I have heard inside the youth work sector, inside the youth sector, in schools, what are the main issues that have been risen, then it's definitely environment, because the
mhm,
crisis has been thrown onto young people, and some from the older generation still don't take it seriously enough
mhm,
to take some action. Then, of course, democracy, because there are different ways to approach democracy, and none of them are, or like some of them aren't actually the democratic way. So, democracy as well, so we could all feel good in our own countries, in our own environment. Mental health, of course, after the COVID crisis, after all kinds of crises that have been going on in Europe, Ukraine war, and so on, we need some more support on mental
mhm,
health topics. And that not only means that we are going to schools to talk about what is depression, how to react when you see that some friend has an anxiety, or so on. We actually need some tools what the young people
mhm,
can use, and maybe also to take the tools into action with the young people throughout the school days might be supporting more, because when you learn about the tools and you don't use them, then nobody uses them at home. So
Mm,
actually mental health, and of course like social skills through the crisis have been a bit weird
mhm,
afterwards. I'm also socially super awkward. I have social anxiety, and that's totally okay. I just know how to manage that. And
mhm,
I think that that's the message for young people as well, that all of the mental health topics or mental health issues are also diseases that can be cured. If you are in a bad place, you can always come out, but you need to know how, and you need someone to support you.
mhm.
Even as an adult, even as a 24-year-old super old young person, I still need some
Oh,
help when I dive into places. Uh,
definitely.
and yeah, what I want to mention maybe is the youth participation in general, how to engage young people into different decisions, and how they could actually engage with the decisions. As I already mentioned, there are different ways, and for me, it's another thing is to be honest. What are you expecting from the young people? Not that they come together and then they are doing something and it makes something and nobody will see the result, but what is
Mhm,
actually the meaning of the youth and young people into those kind of decisions, and on which levels. So yeah, I think that those are the key topics that I have been hearing around
mhm,
before the European elections as well.
mm,
If I remember correctly, I think around 1 year ago, there was a huge mobilization from certain members of the European Parliament to have European Year of Mental Health, if I'm not mistaken. That I think in the end it didn't go through. In the end, we had the European Year of Skills, but yeah, you can see also certain MPs and politicians they want to bring this mental health issue in the forefront.
no, definitely very important topic. Definitely, I'm happy to see that more people have this awareness and they don't afraid to talk about topics connected with mental health. And slowly, we are breaking all the stigmas connected.
Yeah, and it's taken seriously, which is,
With.
I think, the most important part. That there are also politicians in my country that have told about. Like, I also went through the depression stage. It was super hard, but I got through it, and that's okay. But yeah, I really like the stigmas idea behind the
Mhm.
mental health, because there still are a lot.
Mm, unfortunately.
My next question, Laura, is regarding the Qatar Gate scandal, which happened a few months ago. And while it may not be as severe as President Snow's tactic of poisoning his political opponents, I think this is my last reference to the Hunger Games. It is very, very serious. And I want to ask you, do you think that this scandal has influenced young people, perception of the European Parliament, of European politics?
For sure. I mean, every scandal has some kind of influence over some kind of decisions. It's it's just that the European elections are just behind the door, as I would say, and uh, I would say that. But it's also important that there are some scandals that should see the daylight and should be addressed by the media and pointed out, because there's a song in Estonia that starts with the sentence like, "My mother told me that all of the people are beautiful and good," which is like a little bit really nice sentence to say, but it's not true. And of course, there are different people with different approaches, what they want to do in some kind of places. Not of all of the ideas are good in the way that they are supportive, and we have institutions to actually see and address those kind of problems. So from that point of view, I would say that the scandals are good, and when they are pointing out the problematic spots, then of course it's really really necessary to point them out. At the same time, political arena, media image or media view is has never been too good anyways. So even there are always scandals going on and so on, and as a politician you have to just take responsibility for it. If there's going on something around you, for me, it's the honesty part again. You have to be honest with you, with your voters, because those are the ones that actually want to see the change that you promised them when you were running for this kind of place. And at the same time, when we talk about those kind of scandals, well, you are in Brussels. Of course, you know the scandals. Of course, you see them happening all the time because your country is so international at the same time that you are in the media form. For a border city like Estonia, I would say that not all of the scandals even reach us. Of course, this one reached, I think, all of the countries, of course, but there are some scandals that are not too seen from other sides of Europe, or maybe they are not so important for the viewers or readers for those kind of countries. So what the scandals do are that they point out some kind of problematic scenes, and it's important to take action to change that so the problems wouldn't occur. But from a politician's point of view, there are some scandals that are just not necessary on like personal level. I don't like when people are talking about personal issues on some kind of media level, and but that might even be more uh, like catching for the people who want to get some kind of bad news about somebody. We are not right now. I'm not talking about those kind of like serious scandals when they are talking about corruption, for example, but about like personal affairs or so on. So from that side, I would say that the scandal and scandal means two different things, and it also the person who sees them or reads them or gets engaged needs to actually think about what does it actually mean for them. So from yeah, I would say that the scandals definitely influence it, but it can be both ways. It can be bad, it can be good, and yeah, it's important to take action and stay honest. I would say.
A good point. Okay, Laura, so now we would like to invite you to play a small game with us. The game
Mhm.
of fact or fiction. So first of all, you need to choose an opponent. So or Stefanos or me. With who are you going to
Hmm.
play
This
today?
is, I think, that the toughest question of the game, but I will pick Stefanos then.
Uh-huh.
All right.
No way.
Okay.
Okay. So what's gonna happen now? Me, as a game master, I'm going to read for both of you some statements. Statements related to EU elections. And your task is to decide if this statement is a true or a fiction. Are you ready?
All right.
Of course. Let's do it.
Okay. So the first question goes to Stefanos. Let's start with you. And you will get a question, well, statement about Estonia.
Okay.
Estonia will have 6 members of the European Parliament in the 2024 European elections. True or fiction?
I I think 6 is the minimum that you get, and it's the number Cyprus gets, and it's smaller than Estonia. So I will say it's fiction. I will say Estonia should have more compared to the size.
And I see that Laura is confirming. Yes, that's correct.
Is it
Actually,
7?
yes, it's 7.
Ooh.
It's
Well
Do I
done.
also get a point?
okay. That's fair. She knew it correct answer as well.
I think it's fair.
Okay, speaking of numbers, Laura, I see that you are good with numbers. So next question for you, numbers related. 610 members of the European Parliament were voted during the first European elections in 1979. True or fiction?
I'm not good with numbers or history too much. So 2 points for Goro for pointing me into statement that I don't know. But 610, that might be true. No, no, it's not. It shouldn't be even. It shouldn't be even. So it's fiction.
It's fiction. Is it your final answer?
I think so.
And you are correct. It's fiction. So the correct answer is 410 members of the European
Even,
Parliament
even
were
lower than
voted
the.
during the first
Oh,
European elections in 1979. Well done. So we have 1-1 when it comes to the points. And bonus points to Laura for having the answer for the exactly number of Estonian members of the European Parliament.
fair enough. Fair enough.
Okay, Stefanos, next question. The Europe that's too easy. Let's give you this one. The question about your favorite person, the person whose picture you have next to your computer on your desk. Ursula
Ah,
von der Leyen will run for the second term as a president of the European Commission.
that's a very easy question. Wait, I remember.
True or fiction?
Wait, I remember reading about something like this a
There
few
were
days
a lot
ago.
of news about it, like if she's
Yeah,
running or not. I don't even know which one was like the last one.
I will say. I will say no. She's not. She's not running again.
Do, do, do. Yes, she
No, she will.
will.
Okay.
So that means that Laura is getting a point, and right now we have 2 points for Laura, 1 point for Stefanos. And another questions goes to Laura. Okay, this time not numbers. Let's be
Good.
fair. So the European Parliament has 3 official headquarters: Brussels, Strasbourg, and Paris. True or fiction?
I don't think there's one in Paris, so fiction.
Correct. Well done. Well done. That's the correct answer is that the European Parliament has 3 official headquarters in Brussels, Strasbourg, and Luxembourg.
And I think they are mainly meeting in Strasbourg
Yeah.
for the plenaries, if I'm not mistaken, and in Brussels, for their daily work and do the scandals.
Even
But there are also a lot of youth events happening in Strasbourg all the time where they engage young people. So
that's true.
yeah, that's
That's
one of
true.
the good places where to engage and see how the European Union works actually.
Definitely. And even though Stefanos, that was really good try of getting extra point, I still believe that points goes to Laura. So we have 3-1, right?
3-1. But do
3-1.
I have some more questions? Can I turn this around, or
I don't know. Do we have more questions?
we have more
We have more
questions?
questions.
Maybe I can turn this around.
Yeah, sure. So are we still going asking both questions to you and Laura, or it's our final question, and the first person who will answer is winning the whole game?
That's a nice rule.
Okay, so let's check. Now both of you can answer. Um, the first president of the elected European Parliament was a woman. Do you know her name?
Um,
I know what she looks like from the picture. If that gives you a point.
I think because we've been with the young journalist in the parliament a few weeks ago, and I remember I saw her name. Um,
So you saw her name Well,
Yes.
Laura knows how she looks like.
If we combine them.
Yeah.
um,
This is how you, Goro, now you see how the European Union influences the borders countries of the European Union.
I think it was Simone.
Mhm.
Simone something. Simone Veil.
That's correct.
That's oh nice.
And now Laura can tell us how she looks like.
Brown hair.
That's that's correct. Well done. I'm really proud of both of you. You show that you know things about EU and about EU elections. Um, and I think it's fair to say that still Laura has more points. 3 points for Laura, 2 points for Stefanos, and
But
Laura
as
is there.
Stefanos answered the last one correctly.
That's true. That's true. Then we can say
It's a tie.
it's a
It's a
tie.
tie.
It's a tie. Let's say it's a tie.
Thank
Well done,
you, Stefanos.
congratulations, and congratulations. And before we say goodbye, Laura, I have a final question for you. If you had to choose one song for upcoming EU elections playlist, which one would it be and why?
Mhm. As a patriot of Estonia, this year's song for Eurovision is, if I translate it directly, it's I don't know anything about the drugs. And not to say that it's somewhat connected, but if you look at the video, then you can see there's a lot going on. You don't know what's coming up as a result, and you just hope that all of the people in the audience dance with you. So I guess that's the really good summary of the European elections, that there is a lot going on and all of us actually need to engage for it, to enjoy it, to dance, to enjoy the moment. So yeah.
That's an interesting choice. We definitely need to watch the video and
You
check
do
the
need,
song.
and you
Maybe
also need to vote
tomorrow,
for
Dio.
it.
Thank you so much, Laura, for joining us today in the second episode of Be Europe. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in.
And additionally to our listeners, we challenge you, don't be a spectator in the political arena like the citizens of the capital, but engage in the EU elections, register to vote, research your country's MEP's political manifesto, and above all, don't let others choose for you. And don't forget to follow Eurodesk on Instagram and TikTok, and be sure to check our EU elections info hub.
And register for
And
Together
register
EU.
for Together EU.
And register for Together EU.
Register for Together EU.